I'm going to walk you through the steps on how to set up your project and start to create your CAD project for Intro to Industrial Tech, which is the Mail Caddy. So once you have Autodesk Fusion 360 opened, the first thing that we're going to want to do is go ahead and select New Project. So when I click on New Project, this is going to create a project structure for our class. And so I'm going to name that project Intro to Industrial Tech, or IIT, and I'm going to go ahead and put my initials. And then I can go ahead and select Enter from my keyboard. And so everything that we do within Intro to Industrial Tech class can go within this project. I'll go ahead and double click on the project, and then within the project, I'll create folders for each of the different things that I do within the class. And so I'll go ahead and select New Folder. I'm going to name the folder Mail Caddy and my initials. So make sure you put your initials under Mail Caddy. And then I'll go ahead and open that folder. And this is where all of our files for our CAD model are going to be saved for our Mail Caddy. Once you have that done, I'm going to go ahead and close the data panel just to give us more room to see on our screen. All right. So the first thing that we're going to do is, if we look at the file for what we're going to be creating here, we're going to be creating a 3D, a solid model for this Mail Caddy here. So we're going to be creating something that looks exactly like this. We have to have a starting point. And so we're going to start by creating the base part of this first. So the base on this view here is on the bottom view of our drawing. It's this part right here. When I scroll down, I can look at the actual base view and see the actual dimensions of that. So this is what we're going to be creating first. And so in Fusion 360, the first thing I'm going to do is, under the Assemble tab, I'm going to go ahead and click that drop down and select New Component. And so what that is going to allow us to do is, it's going to allow us to create one component of our Mail Caddy. All right. And so under here, I'm going to make sure it says internal, and I'm going to name that component base, and then I'll go ahead and select OK. And now we're going to be working within this base component. All right. And so once I have that done, I'll go ahead and click to create a sketch. I'm going to select this plane to create the sketch on. And from here, I'm going to create two-dimensional shapes, and then I'm going to use those two-dimensional shapes to create three-dimensional geometry. So the tool I'm going to use to create this base is the two-point rectangle. So I'm going to come up here and I'm going to select a two-point rectangle, and I'm going to start from the origin point, and I click, and I'm just going to drag a box, and then I'll click when I want that box to end. And a couple of things that I want you to know from this notice is I have two of these lines are black and two of them are blue. And so what that's telling us is that these two lines in our sketch here are not constrained. So they don't have information telling it how large it should be. So if I go ahead and hit escape on my keyboard, what that means is I can move this in the width dimension and the height dimension. And it will move because those dimensions haven't been defined yet. I'll go ahead and, under my sketch tools, click this sketch dimension tool, and then I'll select the width, and I can click and drag a box down to put a dimension in. I'll then make that dimension 8 inches. So I'll click or type in 8 and hit enter. And then notice that now this line has turned black because this dimension, the width of this, has been fully constrained. I'll do the same thing for the height. I'm going to select this dimension for the height. And then I'll go ahead and put in my dimension for that. It's 3.5, so 3.5 inches, and I'll select enter. And now the width and the height of that sketch have been defined. So once that rectangular shape is fully constrained, I'll go ahead and select Finish Sketch. And then I have this view cube over here. And so I'm going to come up here to the view cube, and if I select the home view of it, the little house, it will give me an isometric view with kind of a three-dimensional view of the sketch I just created. And the reason I do that is just because it's a little bit easier to see in this view. From there, I'm going to go ahead and select the Extrude tool. So what the Extrude tool is going to do, it's going to add volume to our sketch and actually make it a three-dimensional part. And so when I click the extrude tool, I have a dimension then. I'm going to go ahead and make that a 1/2 inch or 0.5. All right, and so what I've done now is I have given this sketch, that rectangular sketch, a third dimension, and now it's a three-dimensional solid. All right. One thing that we did incorrectly though is if we look back at our sheet, I made that thickness of the material a 1/2 inch, and it should be 3/4 of an inch. All right, and so I'll go back into Fusion. Instead of starting over, I can simply come down here to my timeline, and if I right click on that extrusion that I just did and click edit feature, I can edit that extrusion and make it, instead of a 1/2 inch, I can make it 3/4 of an inch and hit enter, and it automatically updates for me. Okay. The next thing that we're going to create, if we look at our plan, are the side pieces. All right, and so this is what the side piece looks like. If we look at it on the assembled view, you can see there's a side here and a side here. So those are the pieces that we're going to go ahead and create. So if I go back to my software, from this point, I'm going to go ahead and say I want to assemble, click the drop down, and I'm going to make another new component. And I'm going to again come in, it's a standard component, and I'm going to name it side. And I'm going to go ahead and select OK. From there, I'm going to go ahead and click to create a sketch, but instead of doing it on one of these planes here, I'm going to do it on this plane that's created by our base. So I'll go ahead and select that I want to create a sketch there, and I can start using, again, my sketching tools to define the shape that will make up that side piece. So in this case, I'm going to use a line tool. I'll start down here at the base, and I'm going to draw a line up, click, and then notice in the dimension I can go ahead and type in 9.5 inches, and that's the height of the side. All right. From that 9.5, I'll get my line tool over again, and I'm going to come over in to the left of that, and from our drawing, it goes over 3/4 of an inch. And so I'll go ahead and type in the 3/4 and hit enter again. Then I'm going to go ahead and select the escape key on my keyboard, and I'm going to, because I don't know exactly how this angle is going to work out right now from my drawing, so I'm going to start from this point and work the other way. So I'll go ahead and again select the line tool. I'm going to go from here back to our origin, and that creates the base of it. Then I'll select from this point and draw a line up again. And if I look at my drawing, it is 6 3/4 of an inch. 6 3/4 from that point up. And so again, I'll go ahead and hit enter. And then the angled piece just becomes a line that connects these 2 points together. All right. And so once I've done that, I have the shape that I need for my next part, and I'll go ahead and select finish sketch. I'll select the home tool again. I'll select extrude, and I'll select both the top and bottom pieces of this. So it's all one part. And I'm going to drag that out again 3/4 of an inch and hit enter. And now I have the first side created for our part. Notice how our base is still kind of grayed out. That's because it's not selected up here in our browser. And so if I come over here and I click to select the base, all right, so one thing that I want you to notice is that I have side selected. When I come up here and select base, notice that it shows not just the base, it shows both the side and the base. And so again, if I select the side, it shows just the side, but if I select base, it shows the side and the base. All right, so what we've done is we've created what's called a sub-assembly. And so this side became part of the base structure because when we created the new component for the side, we did that within the base part. All right, and so this is not how we want this to be within our model. So I'm going to go ahead and select the side right here, and I'm going to click and I'm going to drag it up to the top level of our overall assembly, and I'll select and drag it in there. And notice that it created the side now as a totally separate component from the base. The next thing that we're going to do is come up here to the top level and select the overall model. And so notice how it's multiple components put together. That's because this is this assembly, and each one of these individual parts or components is an individual block because it represents an individual component. All right, so we're going to go ahead and save this now. So I'm going to click save, and I'm going to name it Male Caddy and my initials, and I'll go ahead and click save. And notice that the assembly now becomes called Male Caddy. All right, and so now what we need to do is create the other side component. And so what I'm going to do to create that is I'm going to go ahead and highlight my base. And from the base, all right, so I have the whole assembly selected up here. And what we're going to do now is we're going to create, again, the second side. And to do that, we're going to create a plane in the middle of it so we can just copy this side over to the other side. And so to do that, I'm going to go ahead and select my base view. And then I'm going to come over here, and on the side, I'm going to turn off the eyeball. And so the eyeball makes it so that side is not seen. Then we're going to use a construction plane to find the middle of this base. So if I click the drop down under construction, I'm going to select mid plane. I'm going to select this surface, and then I'm going to use my view cube to scroll around and select the other surface. And that puts a plane in the middle of our part. And so you can make the plane bigger or smaller. The size of it doesn't matter because we're just going to use it to copy over the geometry we need. Next thing I'm going to do is go ahead and unhide our first side, and I'm actually going to select it. Then I'm going to come over here to my create tools and click the drop down until I find mirror. All right. Once I've done that, it's going to ask us what type of mirror do we want to do, and we want to mirror a component. And so that's the entire side. So I'm going to select to mirror the component. And then it says select the mirror plane. And so I'm going to click on this, and I'm going to come over here and find mirror plane 2, or I can select it right here in my browser. And then I can select OK. And so what we've done now is we've created, basically what we've done is we've created a copy of side, and then we have side that has been mirrored. All right. And so we can see that from our view cube, it's right in the place it's supposed to be. So that's an easy way to kind of duplicate parts. The last thing I'm going to do here is under that mirror plane, I'm going to go ahead and turn it off so we don't have to look at it for the rest of our modeling.